Hey, boredom, what's up? It's the Culture Detective here investigating your favorite albums, and today I'm going to do another album review where I review an album. I'm going to be reviewing the latest. Okay, one moment. 万能青年旅店, or in English, Omnipotent Youth Society, with their latest album, 冀西南林路行. Or for some reason, the English translation is inside the cable temple, even though it directly means a walk in the woods of Hubei forest of the southwest. So, Omnipotent Youth Society is a band formed in Shijiazhuang in the province of Hubei in China, and this is their sophomore album. And apparently, their first album, their debut album, is released in 2010. And they didn't release a single album for nearly 10 years until at the end of 2020 they released this album. And I haven't even heard that this album is released until recently, so I decided to check it out. And normally, I don't listen to Chinese music because I normally think it is overrated, bloated, overproduced, very derivative, and not inspired at all. But we have Omnipotent Youth Society here, which I think is a bit of an exception because their music is not the kind of music you would expect. But this band here, they make art rock, prog rock, jazz fusion music, and their music is actually pretty damn interesting. So without further ado, we have the album, this one, Inside the Cable Temple, or A Walk in the Woods of Hubei Forest in the Southwest. It's a pretty wordy title. And this album is a bit of a concept album because if you look into the lyrics, we have lyrics constantly talking about the nature, essentially living life in the city, especially in somewhere industrial like Shijiazhuang, is tiring, it's exhausting, and it can really suck the life force out of you. So once in a while, you really ought to take a break and just go walk in the forest. And this album is essentially that, and it's sort of like the spiritual journey of just enjoying the nature. The album opens off with again, I may butcher some Mandarin here. Leave me alone. I'm not a Mandarin expert. We have Zhao, which means morning, and it is an intro track where we get these really beautifully arranged dense horns on the track, and it sort of builds up to the second track, 泥河, or Muddy River, where we have this really sweet and dreamy and nostalgic guitar chords with really smooth strings backing it up, and the whole track has this really nice, calming, and relaxing vibe to it. And we have lyrics sort of describing the scenery of the forest walk. We have lyrics that are constantly being repeated. I can only hear thunder sounds and I can feel the summer coming. And the lyrics, they're pretty interesting because they don't describe the forest in a way it looks like on the surface, but more what it stands for spiritually. But then at times they would mention words like man-made pool or man-made pond, which made me chuckle a little bit. Then we have the third track, 平等云貌, which means equal mist, and or equal fog, where it's another interlude with these droning guitar tones, nothing all that special, and it eventually leads up to the fourth track, 才是, which means quarrying. And this track is an easygoing, slow-paced guitar back song, kind of similar to the second track, but I guess more slow-paced, a little bit more indulgent. And again, lyrically, there are some interesting moments. We have lyrics like, use my body as a ladder, use my body as a climbing fence. And towards the end, we get these jazzy pianos and then the horns. We got the horn solo, and it all wrapped up in a very nice ending. The fifth track here is called San Chue, or essentially titmouse. And at first, I'm like, what the heck is a titmouse? Turns out it is a kind of bird that is on a mountain, thus the name of the bird in Chinese, mountain bird, quite literally. But San Chue, essentially, it is a short ballad, and lyrically, it is a tribute to nature. Instrumentally, it is just kind of okay. It feels more typical than other tracks on the entire album, but lyrically, it is certainly a highlight on the album for me. We have the opening few lines: "The nature is giving you treetops, breezes, rainstorm on your shoulder," and it all becomes balance, loyalty, and an undying body. Damn. And also on this track, it features these flutes, which are very fluid and nice. Then it leads very smoothly into the next track, Bypassing, or Rao Yue, where it is essentially an upbeat guitar jam with jagged, distorted guitars, and occasionally it loosens itself into these shuffling hi-hats, jazzy trumpets, and saxophones. Again, instrumentally, very flavorful, has that really nice, crispy, rural country vibe to it. Then we have the final two tracks. We have Hebei Heqilin, Hebei Moqilin, and Moqilin apparently is a kind of a mythical creature, and again, Hubei is a province in China. It's like a state in the USA, but it's a province in China. So Hubei Moqilin, the Moqilin of Hubei, and it is an 11.5 minute long, multifaceted piece with horns and strings and harmony as it opens up, and then we get these soft vocal harmonies. And lyrically, it is pretty abstract. It kind of describes the feeling of a guy who's about to perform a stunt, maybe in a circus, but probably in a performance of sorts, where at first the guy hears these thunder sounds. Again, thunder, which is a repeated concept on this album. And the guy was kind of in pain and kind of scared, knowing that what he's about to do is really dangerous. And then we have the protagonist of the song, or the song itself, sort of talking to the man and saying, "Oh, look at these actors and these and these other people. Look at their cardiograph," which is really weird. And then these lines are repeated with other lines saying, "Now let's try your lightweight lightweight art," which is essentially a kind of martial arts in traditional Chinese culture, where you're so light you can basically fly in the air, which is bullshit, by the way. But it's a bit of a performance thing, and again, it's really weird, but it's a pretty interesting track as well, especially how the instrumental swells at the end, and we get these screaming reeds and screaming vocals all stacked up on top of one another. And then the album ends off with a 10-minute long closer called Jiao Minzhi, or Cable Temple. And even though the title refers to a temple or more of a pavilion, but really this track is about returning to the city, returning to the urban environment. We have lyrics sort of pulling these parallels between living in the nature and then living in a city. We have high magic, high technology, and we have lyrics like it's really, one moment the lyrics would be really abstract, and another moment the lyrics would be like almost ironically surface level, almost in a comedic way. And we have lyrics sort of talking about like medical care, escalators, like wearing pajamas, running on the streets, and essentially loud, noisy crowds of people. It's weird. It's really weird. And instrumentally, this track is like the second track of the album, where we get these nostalgic, sweet guitars with soft vocals, and it's all very nice and warm and calming and relaxing. And I guess I'm just gonna leave it at that. Now, lyrically, it's pretty interesting. Instrumentally, there are moments where certainly it can be more interesting, but I think overall this is a pretty impressive album that has a really nice rural country flavor to it. My favorite track here is Muddy River, probably, and my least favorite is Equal Mist I'm Giving. Omnipotent Youth Society, Inside the Cable Temple, an 8 out of 10. Again, triple 8. I'm feeling generous. So if you're listening to this album, we're 1 to 10 numbers. Just rate it, like it, and subscribe. If you want more, and thanks for watching. Also, normally I wouldn't talk about Chinese music, simply because I'm just not a huge fan of Chinese music. But sometimes you need to put your presumptions aside and have an open mind. And I'm really glad I discovered this album.